So intellectual property rights are rights which are awarded by a government for the endeavours of inventors, of designers and of other rights holders. And we look to separate them into four main categories. The first are patents, which protect people's inventions. The second are trademarks, which protect the names that people give goods and their businesses. The third are registered designs, which are how we protect the look of things, what separates one chair from another chair. And the fourth overarching type is copyright. And those are works which are given, rights which are given to people upon creation of a literary literary work of art, or a photograph or a drawing. And those rights come into existence automatically upon the creation of those rights. I think the first thing to note is that all countries around the world have local IP laws, so local laws which govern their intellectual property and how it's handled at a local national level. Secondarily, most countries around the world have signed up to international conventions which govern how mutually we look to protect IP, intellectual property rights, in countries around the world. On top of that, there are two areas where the EU has established a convention to deal with specific types of intellectual property rights. So turning back to the four types, with regard to patents, all patent international conventions are non-EU conventions. And so over the next few months and ongoing into the future, we don't expect the no-deal Brexit to have any impact on how patents are treated either locally or internationally. With regard to trademarks, as I said, there are local national laws which govern how trademarks are to be dealt with in this country. There are also international conventions which detail how applicants can obtain trademark rights in other countries. And in contrast to patents, there is what's known as the Community Trademark Regulation, which covers the whole of the EU. Subsequent to a no-deal Brexit, UK companies will be able to access the Community Trademark Regulation and therefore obtain coverage over the entirety of the remainder of the EU, but those rights will not cover the UK. And so businesses will have to elect to file both for a community trademark application and for a local UK application. For any rights which are already existing, any community trademark rights which are already existed and registered on the date of the no deal when we exit the EU, those rights will automatically become UK rights and EU rights, and so businesses will not be affected by a no deal Brexit. If those rights are pending on the date that we exit the EU, businesses will be asked if they want to continue with the UK rights, and for those they will have to pay. For rights which are granted on the date of a no-deal Brexit, they will automatically and at no cost become UK rights in concert with the existing EU right. For registered designs, a similar process will occur. So there are national rights which cover registered designs. There's an international system which covers the granting and the obtaining and granting of designs in other countries. And there is also an EU regulation, the Community Designs Regulation, which covers the EU. Similarly to trademarks, on the event of a no-deal Brexit, on the date that we exit, all EU rights granted EU rights will automatically become UK rights and EU rights sitting in concert. And as with the trademarks, any rights which are pending on the date of exit, the businesses will have to then elect to pay for a corresponding UK right to sit alongside their EU right. Copyright is dealt with internationally under a reciprocal arrangement called the Berne Convention, and no, we don't expect there to be any difference in the amounts of protection that are afforded copyright works to people, whether they're inside or outside the EU. The one or two differences that do exist are protecting things called databases, which are a form of copyright protection, and those will be EU rights. The government, as we understand, is working on providing a corresponding right for UK rights holders to be able to protect their database rights. There are some other allied rights to copyright, such as the portability of online content, which may be affected in the event of us exiting with a no deal. Well, I think the first thing is for patent holders, we expect that it's going to be business as usual, whether there's a no-deal Brexit or there is a deal. There should be no difference to how you obtain patents, either on a local level or on a European-wide level, because the European Patent Convention is not an EU instrument, and so we would expect no difference for businesses in terms of patents. In terms of registered designs and trademarks, again, obtaining national rights, there'll be no difference. They will still be able to obtain EU rights to cover the European Union. They will need to ensure that they have the correct representation to be able to file those rights at the EU Intellectual Property Office. And with copyright, as I said before, I don't expect there to be any change to the majority of rights holders across Europe.
We've noticed an increase in organisations trying to establish entities within one of the EU 27 countries. Germany and the Netherlands are popular choices for manufacturing organisations, whereas the Republic of Ireland, for instance, seems to be a popular choice for business service providers. Organisations are concerned about meeting staffing requirements. The prospect of the curtailment of freedom of movement is having an impact on their employees, and that's having an impact on the employment market as well. So far, organisations have had the benefit of an EU-wide patent registration to protect their intellectual property rights. Organisations could potentially be at risk of having their intellectual property rights infringed whilst registrations are pending.
From my perspective, I think the thing that businesses need to do is to take stock of their intellectual property position, to understand how they're going to interact with the EU in the future, and ensure that they've got adequate representation to be able to exploit the opportunities that will inevitably come as we exit the EU.